are attending a required meeting that they both need to be at. So Mayor Pro Tem Paul Murphy and I will be filling in for them, and we are committed to getting you out of here for an early dinner. I am going to do, along with BJ, a quick kind of review of Civic Clerk. We want to highlight a few things for you, but before we do that, I'll just quickly go through the agenda. You can see on our evidentiary hearings, we closed the public hearing for the Mid-South case back in January, and you all voted to postpone the actual decision until next week on the 14th. So the planning department has uploaded some updated findings. So you will see that in your packet for consideration for next week.
I don't think we did Mid-South. I think that what you just said is true about the Southern Pines Country Club case.
Oh, did I get confused? Okay, I apologize. Yes,
Don't worry.
that's right. We were talking about the Southern Pines.
Not to worry. Okay,
Yes.
so in regard to Mid-South,
Correct. With Mid-South, yes, you, correct. I apologize for that.
Problem.
Yes, no, we have not held that hearing yet. So that hearing will be next week. And then on Southern Pines Country Club, we did close that hearing, and that one you voted to have the decision. So apologize for the confusion. And if you'll recall, Councilmember Pate, he was recused from the meeting last month. Do they need to vote to recuse him again? Okay, well, all right. We will go ahead and rearrange the agenda, if you all are good with that, so that all of the items that he will be participating in will be at the beginning of the agenda.
Certainly. Yeah, I'm out of that one.
you're out of Mid-South and you're out of the Country Club.
Yeah, but if y'all are, I mean, I guess if they're just voting on that other one, if it needs to, I mean, I can step out or just sit there. But I guess there's definitely 4A, if that one could be towards the end. If the other ones don't appear like it'll take too much time, that way I can just leave, I'll just go.
Yeah.
So you're out of 4A, you're out of 5A, and are you out of 5C?
No.
Okay.
Ordered.
For what it's worth, I will add that we have received word from the applicants, from the applicant's technical representative, that 4A may request another continuance. But I say that only as an FYI, because until they ask for it, they haven't submitted anything to us in writing that we will be, and even if they did, we would have to give it to you guys. It can't be done administratively since the hearing has been opened. But just as a heads up for general knowledge, our understanding is they may request a continuance.
That hearing has not been opened.
Excuse me, correct. Actually, it was in order to be continued, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was
Oh,
open.
did we
and then
open and close it?
immediately continued, yeah.
Yes.
Can we, if we do have that and push it to the end of the meeting, can we notify the applicants? Because they said around that whole meeting, and then for us to say, we're not doing this, so at least they'll know it's later on the agenda.
Notify the.
Right.
The applicants.
For the Mid-South, if we are moving that to the very end, just let them know that, so that, I don't know,
Yep.
if they want to show up late, they don't have to sit
If
through.
you're going to request a continuance, you might want to put it at the beginning. And I don't, what you said, unfortunately.
Oh, 4A, okay.
All right, 4A.
However the agenda comes out, we'll make sure to share it.
I was gonna say, I would be happy to make a motion that Jessica, when we know, rearranges the meeting accordingly. If it's being continued, just go ahead and put it on the front.
Okay.
Cool. Does that sound good?
Yep, we will
Right, I don't even think you
wait
need a
and see
motion.
what we know by Friday afternoon and arrange accordingly, because that definitely does make sense. All right, before we go into the remainder of the items, I'm going to pause there since we couldn't have a lot of discussion on those, and then BJ and I are going to continue with our civic clerk review, because I think what we'd like to show you may help you in the remainder of the meeting as you're going through your packets. So the purpose tonight is just to kind of give you an update. I know it's sometimes always nice to look again at technology, and I don't know that Mac has had a real extensive formal training. And then also, BJ and I have been talking, we know some of your packets tend to get very, very large. I think last month's was like 1,000 pages plus, and it can get very difficult to navigate through there, and those large file sizes can become unwieldy. So we wanted to try a couple of things, and this is completely open for feedback. So if you have other suggestions to make it better for you, please let us know. This is just kind of our first take on it. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is you have two different options for how you can actually navigate and access your agenda packets. So the first one is just through our website. And for those of you from the public, this is actually how you access the packets as well. So if you just go to southernpines.net, and then go to your government tab and council agendas. Oh, that's fabulous.
Jessica's on file.
You know, we've got this new VPN and connection, and I think that's what's holding me up here. Okay, give me just a second. Okay, I think we're good to go here.
I didn't see the revised statement in the packet, the revised resolution 1039. You guys.
Jessica, I've got it up here if you want to switch cables.
Okay, that'd be great.
Probably need a link though if you want to send it to me for
The agendas, I mean,
You got the agenda,
the agenda's 2 pages.
and then this is,
And then all the stuff that goes with it.
so you don't, maybe that's what you're asking about. An 88 or 89 thing, yeah, it's all here.
You know what? I just downloaded her email. That's why.
Okay. All right, you've got access. No, it's okay. No, you've got access to it. And a lot of history's in there, and BJ's put a bunch of background information, including the SUP from
1988.
88, 99, yeah. So,
There we go.
That's BJ's there.
So if you go to the town website, come down here to, and up at the top, you go to your government,
Yep.
you go to town council, get to where I'm going, and then under here, under town council,
Nope.
go to agendas.
You went, hang on, there's an easier way.
Yeah.
Go, just go back to the home page. Okay, there you go. So when this is the landing page on our website for all of the council agendas and minutes. And so, can I borrow your remote or your mouse? Okay, so you have a few different options here for how you can access the agenda packets. One option here is if you go over here to this arrow, you can download either the agenda or the packet. And that's not actually the option that I'm going to do right now. But if you hit that packet, it'll download one big PDF file. So what I wanted to show you that is hopefully a little improved for you, if you click this link over here for town council agenda meeting, I don't know how many of you actually access your packets this way.
I do.
Okay, good. Then you will definitely notice the difference in what we have done here.
Jessica, it's a 2-screen arrangement, so it's actually on my screen. So
Of course. Wow, we are really failing at our efforts here to make this easier for you tonight. Okay, I'll let you drive from here. So what you can see is that this is a nice kind of HTML version of the packet. And the main improvement that we've done here, you'll see here in item 4A, previously what you would have seen for each of these like planning packets was just one big link that would have had all 15 of those files combined. And that was what we knew would be difficult to get through. And so we decided to do those individually so that, you know, as you're reviewing this, you may not need all 15 of those. And particularly like if you're in the business meeting and you're making decisions, you know, we thought that this would especially be easier because I know you're trying to kind of on the fly really get to particular items. So we just wanted to show you that it's a really subtle, but hopefully it makes it a lot easier for you to navigate that and not have to go through 1,000 pages at once.
Well, and the public has access to it as well, right? So if
Yes,
somebody's
this is
sitting
the
in our
public
meeting-
agenda.
Yeah, I think this is fabulous. I mean, for that reason alone, if someone is in our meeting and they're like, deed, where's the deed? And they're going through like page 648.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this gives people access to be able to pull things up quickly.
Index.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely. It's
exactly.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it more is like. And so you can see another example with the Southern Pines Country Club. And then obviously these other ones, as you keep going through, they get a little shorter because there's just individual ones there. So
Does this take a lot of time for you guys to do it this way?
it actually doesn't. No, because
Jessica, you should have been like, it takes days and days. For you guys, anything's worth it.
yeah, exactly.
Well, no
No.
matter how long it takes, I really appreciate it. I think it looks really good.
Good. Yeah, we're glad. So.
Dedicated public servant.
Yes, and what I was going to try to show you in the board portal is that it's a little different. I feel like the board portal's a little harder to navigate. It's not all lined up like this and kind of, as Ann put it, that table of contents format. So, but one thing I did want to point out, you can probably use this public agenda for 99% of your meetings because we very rarely give you any documents that are not ready for public consumption. You do have one tonight, which I was going to show you, and it has to do with the West Southern Pines resolution. So we'll discuss that one when we get to it. Yep.
This is Civic Clerk, isn't it?
Yes. Are you able to open up that 2.7? Okay, yeah, it looks like you are.
I don't use
No, you're not. You're in the display version, which is a little different.
Jessica, when there is something that is not for public consumption, but we're going to discuss, is that something that Beth can add to the email that goes out so that if we are using,
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. And a good example of that, just for like Anna, and that might be when we have a closed session. And if they're looking at minutes, which aren't ready yet for the public to see, but they do need to actually vote on them, we might put a closed session in there. Tonight, we have a resolution for West Southern Pines that they haven't seen yet. And so I didn't want to get it out there in the public arena. It's not that it's secret, but in case the council wants to make any changes. So yeah, with that, hopefully that gives you a good way to navigate. And if you think of any other changes that makes it better for you, we are all ears. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the resolution for West Southern Pines.
can we move the resolution? Are we going to do it at the beginning of the meeting so that the people who are present to accept I think we're bringing a few people to the front.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was going to be my request and recommendation because this was a request that came from the community connectors. Dorothy Brower reached out to me and asked if the council would consider adopting a resolution. She was very specific to say that they don't want, you know how sometimes towns do, like March 3rd is West Southern Pines Charter Day, and they put it on signs. They're not looking for that. That's not the recognition that they want. They really wanted a more lengthy, detailed resolution that, one, honors the fact that March 3rd, 2023 is the 100th anniversary of the chartering of West Southern Pines. And then also, she asked if we could highlight various individuals and different assets and, you know, historic buildings and things like that that have been prominent in the community. Thank you. Thank you.
I had one change.
Sure.
I gotta find it because I didn't write on the copy. It was where we said that they have made recent strides, and one of them was to purchase the property, the school property. And then I think in parentheses, somehow I can't find it right now, in parentheses
Oh,
it said,
The reference, the Rosenwald School.
yes, it's actually the location of the Rosenwald School, but it's not the building, so I feel like we need to specify,
Okay,
because that's a
yeah.
big historic landmark issue.
That makes sense.
There it is.
They're both film cable.
Yes, thank you. And the pictures came in handy there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I decided, it was already a little bit of a different type of resolution, so I might as well add some pictures as well.
No, I like them.
Thank you. And Rachel did send it to the community just to make sure that we got all of the facts and everything
like-
correct, so.
Is,
Big frame.
This one we weren't going to frame. The last one that we did was a one-page proclamation, and this one they were looking for a more comprehensive, more detailed. So they certainly will get a hard copy of it, but I didn't plan to frame it. One thing that we are doing, though, they're really excited. They've got a whole year's worth of activities planned for their 100-year anniversary, and Rachel's working with them. And they asked if we would help promote that, so we are going to do that on social media. And then we're actually going to add a sub-page on our town website. We have a history page, and there are references to West Southern Pines history there, but we're going to go ahead and add a sub-West Southern Pines history page, and as they keep sharing resources, putting those there as well. So yeah, they're pretty excited about it. And one of the first big events they're having is on March the 25th. It's at the West Southern Pines Center, and it's called Spring Into Community. So yeah, if you have any other further changes before we finalize that package, just
So
let me know.
we're all in agreement that we would move 5B to the top of the agenda.
Correct.
Okay.
After public comment.
When we've done ceremonial presentations in the past, we've done it before, because sometimes those can go lengthy as well. But,
Okay.
it's resolutions, we have to vote on it, right?
correct.
So 5B first, then public comment, then we don't know what's going on with Mid-South. So SUO 622 goes before, the full, do we want to do the full quasi judicial if it does come before us? Or do you want to put a decision on SUO 722 before you do a full quasi judicial hearing?
I don't necessarily have a recommendation one way or the other. I think either, I don't know,
Yeah,
either
we'll-
of the two of y'all
Well,
do.
we'll have
but-
to wait really next week to kind of deal with that since it's quasi. But what we can do, have you completed your comments? Okay. Well, since the comments have been completed, we can now move into a place where the recommendations that have been made, we want to just, the adjustments that have been made to the agenda. And I know, Taylor, you started with the motion.
Yeah, a motion just to, I guess, give Jessica, are you the one organizing? Okay. Just the ability to move the Mid-South hearing, depending on if it gets continued or not. And so if they are not continuing it, I would recommend at the end of the meeting, because it could be the longest, and if they are, well, I guess it doesn't matter if they do continue it.
But we'll need to open it to continue it. So
Yeah.
that would be something you'd probably want to do.
And it would also be nice if there are people there who might not realize that, we could go ahead and send them on their way.
Okay,
So-
great, perfect.
That was a tough motion, but I think I second it.
Good luck trying to get that into writing.
I think I think by that motion, we are just giving Jessica the authority to move as would be most efficient.
Right. What is the pleasure of the council?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you need us to make a motion to approve the resolution with the noted change?
No,
Ahead of
we'll
next week?
just,
You're good? Okay.
and then you'll approve that on the 14th, but I'll go
Okay.
ahead and make that change to the draft. And then if the community comes back with any other requested changes, I'll probably just email you so that you have an idea of what they've requested. So the next item on our agenda tonight is the AR application for the Fort Bragg Federal Credit Union, and we have Elena here to present that.
But they're not here.
Correct.
Are they not coming? Okay.
So do we need to roll through or just hear it?
I guess see what they.
Is this something that we will hear on the 14th?
So
Or-
typically, this would be the presentation time for your ARs. So we could do one of a couple things. We could go ahead and defer if you'd like, or we could let Elena start. And if we get to the point where you have considerable questions that we really need the applicant's response, we could just postpone and, start the hearing when they are here. So whatever your preference is this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Elena.
So you guys heard a little bit about this project last month, and it was decided that we would continue it to this month because there was still a lot of information trickling in at the last moment, and I hadn't had the time to review that. So I thank you for giving me the time to do that, and this presentation will focus on some of those points. So just a reminder, we're talking about a parcel on Brucewood Road. It's part of the Southern Pines Village development. And our applicant is Kuntz Jones, and the project owner is Fort Bragg Federal Credit Union. So they are zoned general business. It's a conditional district, so the use is allowed, and it applies to general business standards. Their future land use, just so you know, is traditional mixed use, which is typical for this kind of development. So there's, talking about Southern Village, conditional district, this is just a refresher of that map. That what's highlighted there in red is the portion of the master plan that this parcel falls in. So it's letter E, and that's, again, it's for office, let's see here, yeah, office uses and the general business standards. It's kind of interesting, we had a fun time trying to interpret this map when we were reviewing it. So I'm going to blow through these. You guys have seen this already. This is the subject parcel. You can see its proximity there to Morganton Road. Looking here at their contours. This is how the street view is from Brucewood. You can see the parcel is forested at this point. It's adjacent to Tarabella and Residence Inn. And across the street is the cinema. And behind it, you can see there's some residences, some residential homes there. So we've got almost 6,000 square foot bank, 3 taller lanes, an enclosed dumpster, and they've got signs that are going to be coming and reviewed in a separate permit application process. So these, you can see we got brick for most of it. There's quite a lot of segmentation going on with the building, giving it some dimension. That front portion there is mainly glass. I think about 70%, if I remember correctly from the report. This is the parking lot facing side. They call it the north elevation, which is the right elevation, not the street facing one where the entries are. So you can see this is the rendering of that building. And we've got, this is the side that's facing the Residence Inn. It's the left elevation. And that's where the drive-throughs are going to be. Again, you're seeing a lot of brick there and some stone masonry there. And we've got the rear elevation. And interesting, this is provided by the applicant after this past meeting, so this is new. But you can see the perspective there at the teller lanes, and that wall that's there behind the teller lanes, that's where they're going to put their mechanical equipment. So it's going to be screened by that. Great, site plan hasn't changed since the last meeting. So this, but these, my analysis sure has. So I've noted on the consistency with UDO 226.7, we've got consistency on A, C, and D, and for B, I've kind of noted slight deviations, but I would say generally consistent is what I've noticed from the application and the materials that they supplied. We'll talk about 410 here in a moment, but they are requesting 4 deviations I'll get into. And for outside storage, I just need them to confirm the height of the trash, or the height of the wall that'll screen the trash and and the mechanical equipment. But again, that's something we will look at site plan review.
Okay.
So something that we'll have eyes on that.
They weren't throwing, you said the mechanical, but they're not throwing their trash cans right by their drive-through lane, are they?
They're not. Here, let me go back to this. You see the little square in the back and the rear? That's where the dumpster, the trash enclosure will be.
Said other like.
Like a
hiding
trash
walls, that'd be
can.
a weird place for your trash. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, so now let's get into 410 for our design standards. So they're not compliant, they're requesting a deviation for the building entries. Those are, as I mentioned, are on the right elevation. That's not street facing, which is why they're requesting that deviation. And that is the applicant's response there, that second bullet, if you want to just refresh yourself with what they had said.
So what's your stance in regard to their stance?
I would agree that the architecture of the building and the wayfinding that they're describing here makes sense. You're having a parking lot that's on the right elevation and your entry is also on the right elevation. It does have a very tower-like, you can see, there we go. Like that tower there from the street view, let's see if from the street view, does add character in a sense of, you can't really tell that it's not the main entry. Because you have all those windows there on that first floor that gives you the passerby, the public, a view into the space. That would just be my take on it. But I don't see any major issues, to be honest.
Thank you.
While the architectural impact of that entry works, I mean, I see what you're saying. What about the logistics, though? Based on the nature of Bruce Wood Road and the curves and how are they going to navigate a safe entry into the,
That parking lot?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they would be taking a left, past the median there to get into the parking lot. Their parking lot would be on that right elevation, so they'd have, I would say, no issue getting into and out of the property, the subject property. And
Is it going to line up directly with that road, or will it be offset a little bit?
it will, but let's see if we've got a north arrow on that. So yeah, that's the curve of Bruce Wood there. So you can see it, it's kind of angled
But
towards
close
the
to right in
curve.
front of it.
Yeah. So people, you see they have plenty of space to move and then park there without creating a line or a traffic problem there, I would think.
Okay.
I guess it depends on how many people are using Fort Bragg Federal Credit Union. That was a good question. Okay, so yeah, that I would say to answer your question, Anne, I don't see a major issue with
Okay.
the entry being on the right
Thank you.
elevation. Letter B, compliant, generally, let's see here, that was, that was about the segmentation, so yeah, I didn't see any issue there. Building materials, this is, you guys have seen this already, but they're under the requirements that are needed for brick in most of the places, so it needs to be at least 80%, and you can see there they've got under 80% for pretty much each elevation. But they've got enough other materials that are permitted, alternative building materials that are permitted under that same provision in the UDO. So again, I don't see an issue with that.
Question, BJ may know. We've sort of talked about this. I know we hate continuing to do deviation, and the 80% brick sometimes looks so institutional that making a small deviation like this, oh, that makes sense. Was there any talk like we did for the awnings to adjust the 80% so that we're not always deviating?
We have talked about that. We have talked about that, and the architectural standards are really what establish character of a corridor, they are just, that is the paint, that is the color of the paint. The paintbrush is this process.
we don't want to tinker with the standards until we know what the CLRP is going to say about character districts.
Okay.
The CLRP appears to be, the work that Matt is doing is revealing that many people in the community feel that growth, fill in the blank of how much, but growth is acceptable, but it shouldn't destroy the character of why we all moved here. Well, when people describe the character, they're really describing one of the main components is that is how the buildings look. So tinkering with those standards to make these adjustments is something that should come after the CLRP. And in the meantime, we did look at awnings, and we are looking at the AR process, but not the standards. The process being what you guys have talked about in the past as well.
That's fine.
All right. Letter D, windows, again, generally compliant. This is something we've talked about as well, that they're not 100% clear. They will have a slight gray tint to them for energy code purposes, according to the applicant. But I would deem them generally compliant aside from that, considering that, energy code is important that they abide by those.
The east elevation, can you point out which side is the east elevation?
The east, north.
West.
Yeah, hold on, that's the west, south. That's the east elevation. The east is the street facing.
Okay, so that's why the percentages are low because of all the windows.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, okay, I think that makes sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
So to actually have that untinkered with 80% there will enable the overall picture of the paintbrush to keep things consistent. And we have the opportunity to move in the areas of deviations for specific properties or,
Yeah.
okay.
By having a default that we, when people come in, they say, what's the easiest way to get this approved? We say, well, meet these standards.
Right.
And then if they go through their process and for whatever reason they can't meet one or more of those, they bring it in with a request for a deviation, and then it's up to you guys to decide. You've seen many buildings that have come through, most recently Freddie's, that complied 100%. And, our standard is our standard, and so the beauty being in the eye of the beholder. If you just follow the standard, you get something like Freddie's and some of the other buildings you've approved that have been compliant. They didn't require any deviations. Coming off of that, you begin to get a greater percentage of other materials.
All right.
Yeah, sorry, I'm jumping forward to our conversation. I'd much rather have a higher standard that we pull back from than like pulling it down to make it easier. So I'm not saying I want us to change it substantially. I knew we had talked about it, so.
And we've talked about it internally too. So that, just to talk about that 71% windows on the facade that you just brought up, you can see pretty significant there. Also, it gives you an idea about how the entry doesn't really, whether it was on the street facing facade or the right elevation, you still kind of get the same effect with the way it's designed. E and G are both requesting deviations. E for awnings, they're using aluminum metal rather than canvas, but it does state specifically in that section, let me read it to you, that they should be canvas or material of similar appearance and flexibility unless otherwise approved by town council. So I would argue that aluminum metal, the way they have it, show that's those green awnings there. Quite different from the canvas type awnings that I think we think of when we think of the design standard.
Elena, by chance, are you looking at the UDO from before the most
Oh, you're
recent
right,
text
yeah, this-
amendment
this
that
was,
amended? Yeah.
This was in the, yeah.
Now, this project would technically be vested when submitted, but this would actually be a rare case where, due to permit choice, we can assume that they would want to take the modified standard versus the pre-standard. The modified standard being that metal awnings would be allowed. So, yeah, this is kind of one of those. Usually, when the standards change, it's like I want to be vested in the old standards. But they would want to have the new standard, which under the permit choice provision they're allowed to have. So.
I do have a question on the awning height. Do you want to address that first?
Yeah, they're proposing 9 feet and 9 inches, and we in our provisions, or in our in our provisions state that they should be at least 8. I think there's a certain height from the. Let's see here. I wish I had the other one in front of me, the new UDO, but it can't be taller than 6. And maybe BJ, you can take a look for me real quick, but.
Okay, so this is an interesting one. We have 2 different standards. We have a height of the awning. We have the distance above the ground that the bottom of the awning is, and then we have the overall height of the awning. And that actually came from a building downtown that has an awning that is shaped like this against the building. But instead of being an awning that comes out like this, it goes way up, and it looks very, very dated. It looks like something out of the 1970s. It just looks very dated. So this is actually saying that the awning itself can't be taller than 6 feet. There is a standard for how much, you might say, clearance. If I'm standing under the awning, how much space has to be above my head versus from the bottom of the awning to the top of the slope of the awning, there's a maximum height for that. So I believe this is compliant with both of those because the clearance is enough above the door, and then the awning itself is actually there. It's flat. Correct.
Thanks, BJ. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so the 9 feet, 9 inches is the clearance, which is above the minimum that we have. And as BJ just mentioned, the height of the awning itself doesn't seem to be an issue. So yeah, we'll correct that.
That answers my question.
Yes, thank you. So then the deviation then that they're requesting, just to clarify, is just for the aluminum. No, but that's also compliant. So that E would end up being compliant. Yep. Forgive me for that error. So moving on to G then, we're talking about the 3rd deviation instead of the 4th. The 3rd for the roofs. Then their pitch is flatter than what our UDO requires. We require a 6:12 ratio, and they have which is a little bit steeper, and they're asking for a 4:12, just a little bit flatter roof pitch. Let's see here, you can kind of see a little bit, this is the awning, but you can see the pitch of the roof there. And their explanation for that is that the craftsman type of building would look odd, especially since that's like rectangular, that it would create those very steep.
About the top of it or right
Yeah.
there where it's circled?
That is the awning, sorry, let's see here if I've got a roof. Yeah, these are the roofs. Yeah, they're saying that because they have those 2 towers there, the way that a steeper pitch would just make those roofs look inconsistent with the design aesthetic that they were going for. That is how it was explained to me by the applicant.
I'm trying to figure out, so where's this come from? Because I'm thinking about like downtown, they're all flat. Like, so where does like the need for a steeper slope, is that like outside of the historic district where this comes from?
Getting at where it comes from and the discussion about how the pitch of a roof adds to character is really, we probably don't want to get into that, but that's a great workshop topic. Really, it is. There's a lot of fascinating things about roof types and how they contribute or detract from a certain character, and what historically, whether it's the climate, whether it's the culture, whether it's snow load in northern areas, whether it's wind load in southern areas, how roofs are classically designed. And when a builder comes from another part of the country and begins to build structures that aren't based on what's normal for that area because of how roofs came to be designed in that area, it can be jarring with regard to the overall architectural character. But I don't want to get into it too much more now because it's a fascinating topic that I've had an opportunity to look into quite a bit over the years. So,
What's the roof material? Is it just like a traditional asphalt roof, or because on the black and white it looks like it's metal?
Yeah, it is. Let me see exactly how they. Yeah, it's a non-reflective metal roof panel.
And is it black?
It is a dark green, like forest green color.
What-
There
Well, we
is
have-
in the attachment, I do have a sample of that. And actually, I think
Is there a chance there'll be a sample at the meeting of that?
to bring it.
And is it the same color as the awning?
The awning looks neon.
The
in these pictures.
awning does look neon, and they didn't really speak to that. They did, and I would assume that it will be that color because I've seen this in same
Is
building in
that-
Fayetteville.
I mean,
Samples, can we request them on Tuesday? Okay.
I was going to ask, that was my last question, is when here, like, when is our last chance to say that color is not, it's too much? Is it this, the AR, or is there another layer like the signs where there's going to be an analysis of what that color?
And when it comes to when it comes to a color on the building, if you want to associate that with one of the criteria under 4.10.4, you know, and discuss that,
mean-
yeah, that now would be the time to do that because we're certainly not going to do it at building permit or at site plan.
That to me isn't exactly in character with what's around there in that area, that bright. So I'd like to see it. Like if they can bring what it looks like.
That,
Y'all, I mean,
Applicant that they should first of all be here next week, and then second of all, they should be prepared to address these things. Yeah.
We have acceptable colors for our buildings.
We have a handful of standards in our 4.10.4 where certain colors are not allowed.
Okay.
However, unlike our historic district where we have a palette and we have a color book,
Yep.
we do not have a color book for the rest of the jurisdiction.
Okay, it's just, there's something, the verbiage is something like it needs to fit in. There's something like that, right?
It is not that subjective. There's a handful of places where it says, for example, brightly colored roofs such as,
Okay.
and then it gives colors. They're not allowed. But it doesn't say anywhere, you know, colors should be tasteful, or it doesn't put that in there because that would need to be a very different process.
Okay, can we have that verbiage included in like somewhere in Tuesday's packet as well?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. The verbiage meaning like from the UDO,
Yeah, or I have the UDO. I can pull it up. I mean, if that's easier.
we can do whatever you want. I just
Okay.
want to know what you mean you're saying the verbiage related to anything that's applicable to color, such as the color of the roof where
Yeah.
we say you can't?
It
Okay.
may already be in here. The 4.10.4G. It has brightly colored roofs such as. Is that the verbiage?
Yes.
Okay, that works then. Okay.
so the part that's circled over there in red,
That's the awning.
okay, but the actual color of that, I imagine is because it's shaded on that side. Would that be more of a hunter green kind of thing that, if that were on the front side where the bright,
The dark forest green is just the roof panels. So the trim that they have around the roof and the awning color, that is a separate green, is my understanding.
They mentioned last time, at some point, and I apologize, I don't remember when, they mentioned that Fort Bragg's logo and their brand is that very, very, very bright green. And that's their place in Fayetteville is it's that bright green. That's their thing. So you guys would want to deal with that now if you want to deal with it. You want to talk to the architect about that.
do we have ultimate authority? Like if I'm like, okay, fine, your sign, but the trim surrounding the entire thing in that color is a no-go. I mean, do we have that much authority when it comes to the color of, I mean, what is,
Based on your feedback here this evening, we are definitely going to look into it.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The sign is
We will,
much
we
smaller.
will look through
than
the UDO to see what is in there, and we will carefully advise you of your options
All right.
a week from tonight.
Thank you.
And I have a feeling it'll have to do with letter C about building materials, because that talks about accents. But we will do our due diligence there. All right. So that would be the last deviation there, the roof pitch, and I noted what you guys have spoken here about the trim color.
okay.
Does anybody have a problem with the roof pitch?
I didn't, no.
Yeah, I don't either.
Roof
Okay,
pitch is fine.
all good? Roof pitch?
Fine.
Okay.
And lastly, the signage will be reviewed at a different permit, as I mentioned. And we'll look at the wall heights too during site review. And we talked about that.
Getting answers to it looks like there was a lot of email correspondence included in the packet. It looks like you're getting timely response.
Yeah, there was a lot of email correspondence, which was helpful from both the applicant and the architect helping the applicant. And then we also had a phone conversation where we talked about each of the deviations one by one.
Okay.
So it
And
was
I'm
really helpful.
assuming that nothing came to you today.
Nothing came today, no.
Excellent.
No, it was,
Thank you.
yes, no problem. So just highlights of what I've said so far. Bank, 6,000 square feet roughly. You guys saw that there were some additional attachments in this, with this packet, including 8, 9, and 10, which were correspondence, the new renderings, the additional, I believe those were the main ones. And then they actually now comply with 4 standards, so that's corrected. We can remove awnings from that. And then so building entries being on the right elevation, building materials not meeting the 80% standard, and the roof pitch being those 3 deviations that will be requested. And my recommendation is to approve it. But, now, depending on now the research that we need to do into the color, and I would rather have an answer for you guys on that, but prior
Right.
to decision.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elena.
Okay, Elena. On 6, the review proposed consent agenda for next week's meeting. Okay.
So the first item is the resolution condemning hatred and discrimination, and there were a couple of minor changes that council requested at the January work session, so staff has made those. There's many others that you would like, just let us know, otherwise that will be on the consent agenda if that is okay with council. And then the budget amendments, we have kind of 2 different purposes here. The first 3 budget ordinances, 2053 through 2055, are all related to ARPA funds. And essentially what is happening here, when we initially received our ARPA funds, we placed them in a special revenue fund. And then once we decided to do the standard allowance, then that money was transferred to a capital reserve fund. So Tess is requesting permission to close that special revenue fund. And then there's about $30,000 in interest that has accrued, and she will transfer it to those capital reserve funds and then close that special revenue fund. So that is what is happening here.
I guess just when you summarize that, if you do, just to kind of try to explain that this is not the spending of that money,
Correct.
just like accounting for because I know there's a lot of interest anytime we mention ARPA
Yes.
and monies and concerns, just that
Yes.
we're not doing anything. It's just.
No, we are not doing anything. We are simply closing that special revenue fund, which you all, when you allocated the funding, when you took the standard allowance, we moved it out of that special revenue fund before. And so this is just some remaining interest. In light of your comment, I actually have created a webpage on our site specifically for ARPA funds. It's awaiting, actually just sent it to Reagan today for his final review. And I talked about the different purposes and the fact that we took the standard allowance, and then I did 2 different tables, one for the general fund and one for the enterprise fund, and it shows the current balances. And then once you actually approve this amendment, I would go in and add a date of February 14th and show that we allocated interest. And so then once we start spending that money, because we haven't spent anything yet, then we can start to show some deductions
Where's
and what
that?
those were
On the
spent.
site? On the.
Yeah, it hasn't been published
Okay.
yet.
It's
Yeah.
like, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
want to see that.
Yeah. Now, I'd heard you guys and some members of the public ask a few times for a table of charts. I thought that might help with transparency. So I'll send that to y'all as soon as he's approved that.
Thank you.
So.
Good work.
That's great.
And then the second amendment, I know Chief Cameron's super excited about. We have 2 purchases here that you probably remembered when we talked about budget a year ago, that we had ordered some vehicles that had not arrived yet. And the way the North Carolina state statutes related to budgeting work, we had to kind of just allocate that money into fund balance. And now that those vehicles are actually starting to arrive, it becomes an FY 22-23 purchase, even though we ordered in 21-22. So it will look like it's an increase to the budget. It's money that's coming over from fund balance that we had originally allocated last year. So we have a brush truck for $197,000, and then we have another truck for our building and grounds department that is $33,450. So that's good news that vehicles are starting to finally arrive. So those are all on the consent agenda. And then Beth has prepared 3 sets of minutes. And so that concludes our consent agenda. And then if you would all be acceptable to bringing Chief Cameron up, we actually received some updates as recently as this afternoon. We had a meeting related to the solid waste ongoing discussions. And so we'd like to give you the latest information because we're hoping that we can get a funding authorization next week. So
Can I make one comment about the minutes real fast?
Sure.
On the link on the website, we're missing January 10th.
Okay. We'll get those uploaded.
No, that's okay. Thanks.
While he's handing out what I'll just give you a quick summary of what we're going to talk about. At the work session, there was consensus that the town moving towards providing yard debris collection in-house would be a viable solution. Since that time, Chief Cameron and Dave Harvell, our consultant that we've hired, they've had some contract negotiation discussions with GFL. GFL is willing to extend our current contract through December 31st of this year. And they are stating that we would need to increase yard waste collection to $11 a month. It's currently $7.80 something. So it's about $3. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to you because you've had those specific conversations.
Good evening. As always, a pleasure to be in front of council, speaking about my new favorite division.
He really
lot of
misses
fun.
fire.
Fire was so much easier. So we're going to talk about some of the discussions we've had with GFL. And this is a tentative timeline of the way we see things from our discussion between ourselves, GFL, our Davenport Lawrence, our who's helping us with the study. So I'm going to hit the high points here. I intentionally put this in chronological order. So some of the things you're going to say, wow, that seems like it's really fast, but it'll make sense hopefully in the end. And we'll talk specifically about some of our negotiations. So town staff and Davenport Lawrence are making the following recommendations after negotiations with GFL. So after our last presentation to the council, when we had our 34 slides and we came in and we just overwhelmed you with a lot of information. It is still overwhelming, it's still complex, but as you know, the recommendation from staff and from Davenport Lawrence is to at least initially start working towards yard debris. And that's kind of where we're going to start out with this discussion. So with that in mind, the plan is now for between February and March, town staff and Davenport Lawrence will budget and order equipment through the state contract for yard waste, bulk items, and white good collections. Davenport Lawrence is going to be updating the recommendations on what equipment and staffing. As a side note, we actually met with one of the vendors today who is through the state contract. So we have initiated those discussions on trucks at this point in time. So we kind of know where we're going. We will have probably some fairly solid prices, if not tomorrow. They've actually emailed me since I've been sitting in this room, but they haven't emailed me everything yet. So probably tomorrow, if not, but by the end of the week. So what I anticipate is a couple of things. We are going to ask tonight, and this is a non-binding, so I don't see this as a vote. We're going to ask for we're going to write a letter of intent saying, hey, we're going to buy this, we plan on buying this equipment. That letter of intent is non-binding on the town nor non-binding to the council. All it does is get us in line for trucks, is what that does. We need to do that quickly. That's kind of that February, March thing there, so just keep that in the back of your mind.
Can I just
Absolutely.
But we do actually plan to follow that up with, you know, a formal vote where we'll
Yeah,
actually allocate that funding.
You'll have a,
And so this is just kind of like that placeholder, and they will go ahead and they have some trucks that are actually in, they're being manufactured now, and that kind of gets our name on those if we can do that letter of intent.
Tonight or next week?
so all I'm informing you tonight that we're going to do a letter of intent. Unless somebody in this group says, hey, don't do that.
Okay.
There's not a reason not to do that. I don't see that as a voting issue. What will probably happen, and I wouldn't guarantee this 100%, will probably happen at your next meeting, is we're probably going to come to you with a budget amendment and say, hey, here's what we need at the next meeting. And that will be your opportunity to vote and say, move forward, or question us, or stop the process, whatever you choose to do.
And
So,
just so you're aware of what we're signing the letter of intent for, the vehicles are approximately $700,000. So that's what, 3 is what we're looking at.
at this point, it is 3. Now, we are 90% sure that it's 3 of the larger vehicles. There's probably going to be a pickup in there at some point in time, but we're still working through a couple of the details. And those details revolve around our operation of picking up yard waste in the town, what actually makes sense and what works and what's functional and what serves the citizens the best. So we're still working through some of that, but right now we see it as being 3 of the larger vehicles.
And those trucks would do the white goods pickup, the large
That's
bulky
correct.
items.
The plan is to do yard waste, white good, any of the bulky stuff.
Okay, great.
As well, is
Thank
what the
you.
plan would be. So, April 2023 is, you will see us send out a request for proposals that will be sent out between town staff and David Harvell. We will write an RFP to send out to anybody and everybody who may be interested. Obviously, what will not be included in that is yard waste, those things that we're taking on. We really feel like, as we told you at the last meeting, that is going to open the door for us to get additional bids. We've been told by other companies, they are interested in bidding on what we have in Southern Pines. They're not interested in the things that we're taking out. So we hope that we're making correct moves here. Doesn't mean we're not going to insource. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but obviously we want to give the council as many options as possible to say, hey, this is what we can or can't do. So that's,
So, question.
yes, ma'am.
If the GFL contract, if they've agreed to extend through December 31 of 2023, and you are sending out proposals,
So
requests for January 1, 25,
I'll get to that part.
there's
I-
a year missing, so
No,
talk to
I
me.
got it.
Okay, help me.
Give me just a minute, let me
Okay.
get to it, okay?
All right, great,
I-
thank you.
Yeah. So April 2023, we want to prepare the document, send that out, and start looking at bids. June 30th of 2023, GFL has agreed to sell existing carts and bins to the town for $10,000. So all of the carts and bins in town, they will sell it for $10,000, which is about 5,000 carts. They have 50 new carts in inventory. We will get those. There are 7,000 bins that are currently out. We will get those. There are 100 new bins in GFL inventory. We will get those. As a reminder, carts are not required at residential units per our contract. You can have your own trash can, 55-gallon trash can. So I say that to make sure people want to go through, calculate, well, that's not enough carts. Well, you're right, it's not, but some people don't have carts. So I think in the future, in this next RFP, if we go with somebody else, we're going to say, we would like to say that if you're getting your trash picked up by the town of Southern Pines or whomever that contract is with, you have to have a cart, and we supply those carts. So just as a side note, yes, sir.
And there's still other ones, because I know for a fact, one of mine is Waste Management.
Yeah, we
That
know.
they're happily picking up, because they didn't have to give me no.
They don't argue about it. You can ride around town. We see some waste management carts still out. So yes, sir.
If we or they moved, if we end up with a contract with a new person, a new company.
New vendor, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and they are using the arm, the side pickup, are these carts gonna be obsolete? Yeah, are they gonna be compatible?
The sidearm picks up these cars.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that works, thank you.
Yeah. a good question, but yeah, the sidewalk picks up these. July 1 of 2023, the town will be responsible for maintenance, purchase, and distribution of all carts and bins. So July 1, just less than 6 months away, we will become, if council agrees, we spend $10,000 to buy this, we're going to be responsible for all this. At some point in time, we're going to actually come back to you and say, hey, we got to buy more. It may be a budgetary item, but we have to buy more carts and bins just to maintain what we've got from a repair standpoint or those kind of things. Yes, sir?
With the trucks that we would be buying in-house, because I know before I call them like, I need extra bin, they would bring it somehow. Like, would we have the capacity with these trucks to
That's-
deliver them?
That's where that pickup truck I briefly mentioned a while ago would come in. There will be some other truck. These bigger trucks probably would not be delivering those bins under normal circumstances. There will be somebody that we're responsible for that within Public Works.
I don't know if Jessica, are you going to remember this, but the price of carts, if we bought them ourselves, oh, 55, yeah.
55,
So we're getting them for
50,
$2.
Yeah.
And we're saving the environment because we're reusing the carts that are out there, right? Okay, good. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Please stay as happy about that as the rest of this I'm going to read to you. I front-loaded this with all the good stuff first. So also July 1, we will enter into an 18-month contract extension with GFL, which will begin on July 1 of this year. Our attorney has got some of those stuffs, and we're going to start working through that contract extension. That contract extension will include household trash, recycling, all services to be curbside. GFL will provide up to 100 backdoor services for town-approved residents. Yard waste will increase by $3.28. Now, if you remember, some of that language is in the contract they proposed to us, and I think that's going to be anywhere and everywhere that it is. Whoever we get it, they don't want to do backdoor service. They realize there are some exceptions. We're going to have to come up with a method of saying, hey, here are these 100 houses. And my next question is, what if we need more than 100 houses?
I was going to say, their first bid said 5%, didn't it?
Yeah.
It did. That's not I think you may see some adjustment. We've went through a lot of this already, but we may go back and ask, Jessica and I actually talked about it today, we may go back and ask for more than 100. I don't know that they're stuck on 100, but they don't want to do everybody, obviously.
Medical waiver required kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think at this point, it's up to us as the town to figure out how that functions.
Okay.
Because one thing I do know, folks that utilize backdoor service don't have the bins. And if you're like, oh, I got to take it to the street, well, they're going to want a bin instead of dragging what I call Oscar the Grouch trash can to the road. So that may make it seem like we may need more bins than we realize if
could be
we're
the case.
stopping
Could be the
the
case.
back door for all those houses.
And obviously, there is some discussion. This is now to the end of the year, is what I want you to remember. We can write, I don't want to say whatever we want to, but we have some leeway in our RFP to write what we want. Maybe there has been some discussions, maybe we don't do bins if we go to a different company, or if we do it ourselves. Maybe we do something that's on wheels for recycling. So there are some things that we will be exploring for that next RFP. Let's see.
Just a quick comment while you're looking.
Yes.
We have to offer backyard pickup to handicapped individuals. It's a requirement of the Americans with Disability Act that any service the government provides has to be accessible to disabled Americans. So if the number's 120, we gotta get 120. If it's 90, we've got to do it.
August 1 of 2023, town staff will start hiring the hiring process for yard waste, bulky items, and white goods staffing with a projected start date for those staff as of November 1. I will be honest with you, that is tentative stuff. We liable to try to start hiring in May. I don't know yet. We're a little bit leery about what staff we can get in here and what qualifications they're going to need. So that is today's goal. Just to be totally honest with you, if you come back 2 weeks from now and I say something different, I'm probably not making a mistake. It's just, we changed it.
But those things will be continued to be handled by GFL through the end of the year.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So the hiring process that I talk about here, we start hiring in August, is for our staff to handle the stuff that we will take over on January 1.
Okay.
All right? So December 31st, 2023, GFL will discontinue yard waste, bulky item, white good collection services. So our short-term goal is we have to have equipment, personnel in place by January 1st. This will reduce the GFL bill by $11. So remember that $3.28 or whatever I told you? That actually bumps that bill to $11 per household. So we will actually, that will reduce by $11. I am not sitting here telling the board that that money's going to go back to the residents. That is obviously your option to do that. But that $11 may just end up getting rolled over into Public Works for yard waste and pickup. So that is something you'll have in front of you at some point in time during the budget process. And obviously you would have more say so at the time. But what my goal in telling you that is, on December 31st, GFL will stop billing us $11 per household for yard waste and bulky items.
Can I ask you something about the question, the numbers?
Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so July 1st, the yard waste will increase 328. Is that based on their current
That's-
price or their bid price?
That is based on their current price,
Okay.
what they're picking.
Great.
That 328 takes it to $11 currently.
Which their
Here's what-
bid was 10.
Yeah, so here's what I will tell you, is typically each year, and we'll talk about this in a minute, they use a CPI to make an adjustment. They are not using CPI in July 1 on this. It's just gonna be a flat 328 is what they feel like it takes them to do that. So, that was somewhat negotiating. Since they're gonna quit doing it, don't increase the price twice in 1 year. January 1st, 2024, Town Public Works staff will assume responsibility for yard waste, bulky items, and white good collection. January 1 of 2025, either a new contract will have been awarded to a vendor derived from the RFQ, or the town will insource trash and recycling collection based on cost, level of service, and council decision. So our ultimate long-term goal is January 1. Hence why we want to put out a RFQ in April, because if we get some really good bids back and it says, hey, this company right here is the company, whether it could be GFL, whoever it may be, you have the option to say, we want to go with this company. Let's give them time to buy trucks. Let's give us time to get additional cans, whatever we need to make it work. If you decide not to do that and you decide to go to insourcing, that gives us time to up staff and do the exact same thing.
Okay.
So we got some deadlines in there, but January 1 of 2025 is kind of the big one. So if you'll see that carries over that whole year, so we didn't skip something. Questions about the timeline at all before I jump into a couple of things about short-term contract?
When would you foresee, let's see, so you're putting the bids out for contract, but then when would we actually enter into the, whatever we, for the 2025, when is
It would
the,
take effect January 1 of 2025, because right now, we've got GFL picking up our residential waste, solid waste until December 31st of 2024. So we have to have a contract in place well before January 1 of 2025.
but we'll be negotiating potentially the middle of this year for that 2025.
If it's up to myself, we will send out we will send out an RFP. I'm using April. We may very well get it out before April. And the sooner we get it on the street, April gave us a little bit of a window to work in. We may send it out in March, and we give 30 days or 45 days for bids, and then we get bids back in here, and then we come back and say, okay, here's what we got.
Great.
Here's 2 companies, 3 companies, whatever we get back, and say, here is what they've offered.
So by sending the bid out in April and then looking at it maybe even this summer to not start until January of 25, we are giving these companies enough leeway that we're going to get hopefully much better bids, right?
They're not being shortchanged. We have, my opinion, we have removed the things they've all told us they don't like,
Okay,
all right? And we've taken it in-house.
okay,
And then we've given them time. We haven't shortchanged their bid. They can look at the bid and they say, oh yeah, we can get trucks in this time. We can get additional people. We can do these kind of things. So we are meeting what the market is telling us to do, in my opinion.
Oh, and I do want to point out, so the reduction in GFL billing of $11 per month, you did say it may not go back into the water bills, but that's because we are still going to be picking up yard waste.
Yeah,
So the cost will be on us still.
Let me just think about the word,
Okay.
yeah.
I just want to make sure that part is
If you
clear.
notice, and
To
and
GFL.
I didn't say this, but if you notice what I wrote, I used the word redirected.
Oh, perfect. Redirect is a good word.
So I used the word redirected. I
Okay.
didn't say that, but you're exactly right.
That's perfect.
I don't see how you give that back at this
Yeah.
point in time. I don't see that happening.
Will give us authorization to move forward with this, we're going to have to start pretty soon to try to figure out, we not only have to count for that $11 for 6 months, but then to try to figure out what are 6 months of collection. And then there's also disposal. Like this past year, our disposal was $150,000. So when we come to you for the budget of this year, we should have a recommendation for this is what we should be billing for yard waste. And one other point that maybe I shouldn't even be saying this with regard to the RFP, but if perhaps, let's just say GFL is the successful bidder, we may be able to renegotiate a different start date, different service date, because obviously they may not want to continue what they're promising for 18 months if they're able to get a better bid and we negotiated earlier. They had also, and I don't know if this is still on the table, but when we initially had some conversations with them, they're doing this to help us. They had also said they would be willing to consider some language that if we wanted to opt out sooner, we could. So I don't know what this new 18-month contract is going to say, but there might be some considerations for that too. So we feel the January 1, 2025 date is hopefully the maximum we'll need, but
I will tell you, there was discussion about a 24-month contract. We're bringing you our recommendation is 18-month. We discussed 12, 18, and 24, and we all kind of fell in the middle. So we didn't go as far as we could have. I don't think either one of us felt really good about it, a 24-month extension. So we kind of landed on the 18. So
Just out of curiosity, with the GFL arrangement, do we have access? If a particular truck goes down, do they have the resources to bring in?
So that is one of the things about GFL. They do have trucks go down from time to time. And remember, the trucks they're using now have probably been on a 5-year rotation in Southern Pines, so they have gotten wear and tear on them. So typically when a truck goes down, they reach out to another area and they pull a truck in. We have recently had some areas missed. I will say, my opinion is they have actually contacted us within an hour of those areas being missed and said, hey, we've missed this area because of a truck breakdown or because of a staffing issue.
Right.
And when they call us or when they email us, they actually have a plan of what they're going to do about that. We've got another truck coming from Troy. We've got staffing that will be here that'll be here on site at 6 in the morning and ready to go by 7. So typically they have a plan. We have been trying to, we've always done this, but we try to communicate that to that community. So we send a code red message to those folks and say, hey, Mr. Trash or Mr. Recycling today because of a truck breakdown, but starting tomorrow at 7 a.m., there'll be a truck in your area to clean that up. So they will shift another truck into the area if they miss an area. So instead of working with maybe 4 trucks, one day you may have 5 trucks. So they've been pretty good about that. The boots on the ground relationship is really good between our staff and their staff. So so I'm very valuable, to be honest with you, more so than maybe administrative folks.
With an in-house version of that, would we still have access to those relationships?
If we are in-house, those relationships are probably not there. Just for the simple fact is we would be seen as doing this on our own. I will tell you, we had some very, very short, brief discussion, even about the yard debris and white goods stuff, about trying to find some other company that would contract that. We didn't spend a lot of time doing that, to be honest with you. But our discussions and our little bit of research, there's not somebody out there that's just really jumping to go do yard debris. We're not bringing you something that says, hey, we're going to go to contract for this too. We don't think there's somebody out there who wants to do that, or we don't have anybody locally who wants to do that. So the best thing for that is probably to bring that under the town umbrella.
Okay.
So During the transition time, transition pricing, I want to make sure that I emphasize the word that you already heard, curbside. That is going to be an educational opportunity for us, as you know. That was probably one of their main sticking points, and I'm not going to go into that. You understand why that is. So, weekly, effective July 1, weekly curbside collection with the existing container is $9.83 per month, but July 1, there will also be a CPI adjustment based on that CPI. Just so you know, we're paying $9.83 right now is the price we're paying.
Last year, just for reference, our CPI was about 7%, so.
So, weekly curbside recycling collection, 18-gallon bin, $3.35 per month. That is what we're paying right now. Multifamily, small, commercial, current rates for that contract, those rates aren't on there because there's about 3 different rates we use, but those rates would not change, but CPI adjustment would be made. I've already mentioned the biweekly yard waste until December 31st would be $11 per month. No CPI adjustment in July 1. So that is, the adjustment was made for that 328. That is the adjustment. There's no further adjustment of that through December. Bulk and white goods, they can continue that through December. There's a CPI adjustment on that, but I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure that that's going to take place because we're taking everything, and I kind of see that as part of the yard waste package, so we're working through that. So that's kind of with a costing between now and December 31st, or the remainder of the contract, if you will. Disposal rates.
Sir, will you just pause for a moment?
Yes.
So the continuation, these are the rates through this July? These are the rates through December?
So.
With the CPI index, or the
So look at
Increase.
two ways. First of all, yard waste is what it is right now. July 1, it goes to $11,
Okay.
all right? Everything else is current rate as it is, but July 1, no changes until July 1. July 1, it'll get a CPI adjustment.
which is actually, I feel like a much better deal than what we had before, right? Weren't they trying to give us the new contract prices
Yeah.
for the 6-month extension?
They're higher than this. They're
Okay.
higher than this.
That's, I mean,
Honestly, there's give and take both ways. Some of it you'd say, oh man, that's a really good deal. And then on the other side, you say, it's a deal, but maybe.
yeah.
So,
Previously, they were willing to continue the backdoor collection, so that was one difference.
Okay.
Honestly, I think there's some benefit in moving to curbside July 1 because, as Chief mentioned, a lot of the issues that we're seeing are their trucks breaking down. And I think that will improve our service, getting those new trucks here,
Well,
so.
it sounds like everything at least that I have heard over the last 4 months has been that backdoor service is kind of ending. It's got to end, whether we bring it in-house or do it with someone.
couple of things I will tell you from my recent experience. Every company that does waste in the waste industry that we have spoken to, backdoor service is a thing of the past when you talk to them. They understand that group that can't get to the curb, and they make exception for those. You will notice that from, I will say, probably 10 years ago in Southern Pines, backdoor service was used a whole lot more 10 years ago than it is now. So we've got some numbers on that to talk, that there's been a pretty significant flip in that. So I think we're just moving, like it or don't like it, we're moving in the direction the rest of the industry's going. Talking about disposal rates for a minute. Moore County rates, if Moore County rates decrease, GFL desires the right to negotiate a new rate structure. To be honest, we're a little iffy on that. We agree because right now Moore County has not told us their rates are changing. So at this point, the word negotiate is important, or renegotiate is important. So we'll debate that. I'll say this in the same sense, the very next line. Recycling rates effective July 1 of 2022, we've reduced those from $125 per ton to $100 per ton. All right? That is a pretty big deal. The town should be seeing a net difference as a refund for July through January at $25 a ton. So we're talking about roughly just over $14,000 in a refund. So we're pretty happy about that.
David happy with that price?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, David's in Florida, by the way, so we talked to him today, he's all excited. So yeah, he's very good with that price. He's probably even more excited about this next thing. July 1 of 2023, GFL is agreeable to lowering the gallons used in a fuel surcharge calculation by 513.75 gallons. Now, if you know what diesel cost, let's just say round numbers. And if anybody in this room can predict fuel prices, please come see me after the meeting. But round numbers, let's just say for a second, that's going to save us $2,000 a month, right? So if you do that for a year, you may end up around $24,000, give or take. Don't hold me on that, but that's, so they would change that because of the fact that sometimes they're using different landfills. It is not right for them to charge us fuel. Just tell us where you're going and use that. Don't one day go over here that's closer and the next day go over here is further away. So long story short, without getting into a bunch of the details of that, but not necessary, there is some savings in that, which is absolutely positive. July 1 of 2023, GFL has agreed to reduce the CPI calculation on the collections rate to 86% of the collection rate. So for the fuel calculation. So remember, we've been using 100%. Now we're going to use 86%. That's also a fairly big deal, which approximately $12,000 savings there. So those things, that's a savings between some coming back from July of last year, some moving forward from July to December of this year. So questions, comments?
When you say 12,300 in savings, that's over what period of time?
I'm going to say that probably will be, that number would be July to June, because
So that's an annual
yeah,
savings?
so let me say it like this.
Okay,
It's hard to put your finger on that, and here's why. Because they're still doing some yard debris pickup, and they're using fuel to get to the transfer station. So when that goes away, we won't save quite as much, but we'll be assuming that responsibility. So I'm going to tell you that number calculates an annual savings, but the first 6 months, it may be more. The second 6 months, it may be less, okay? We're estimating 12.3.
Both of the fuel savings are starting this summer, moving forward. But the other one is actually backtracking.
Backing up to July, yes,
Great,
ma'am.
okay. And moving forward,
Yeah.
the recycling tonnage.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Questions on that before I jump into a couple of other trash-related items? I guess I should ask this, not necessarily looking for a vote because we don't have a contract in front of us. Any heartburn, any issues with anything in there from a negotiating standpoint that we should attempt to make adjustments? I think we're going to probably talk about that 100 again, but besides that.
I was gonna say, the only thing that sort of irks me is if the fuel surcharge calculation, if they've been doing this the entire time on their contract, is there a reason that we're not backing up at all, that we're only going forward?
There is.
Okay. Would you like to share it with us? Or is that something that needs to stay in your all's negotiation?
I would prefer not to talk about that. It's not, I'm not hiding anything, I promise you, but I don't want it.
Okay. No, that's okay.
We would like to reserve that for negotiation.
That's perfect. That works for us. As long as it's something that you all have discussed or are thinking of.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Promise you we have. So,
And I'll say, some of these little nuances that we've learned, this shows the value of bringing in a consultant, because he's inside, outside, sideways. He knows all of this and, just some of these little tweaks. And so, we will use that knowledge and he will write that into the new RFP. So if we do continue to outsource, after January 1, 2025, we're going to have a different contract and it will put the town in a better position. We actually learned some interesting things about disposal rates that will help us in negotiating, putting out that RFP.
Think about what we talked about at that last meeting. Will the RFP separate recycling from trash? I don't think any of us are ready to let that go, but at the same time, it did there's a cost limitation at some point to where the recycling, it just isn't economically worth it. Will they show us sort of their breakdown?
Well,
So that we can at
we've
least see
done
it?
considerable amount of work on recycling. I don't think, we didn't want we don't want recycling to impact what we call short-term contract we're working on right now. My honest opinion is, and that my mind could change, but I think we're going to bring you something in this RFP that says, hey, we're not sure that we should be doing the level of recycling we're doing or doing recycling at all. I will also tell you, in case you don't know, Moore County is having some of the exact same discussions. They've just created what I call a trash task force. They got a better name for it than I've got. But anyway, after our article in the newspaper a couple weeks ago, the county manager actually called me and we had some pretty lengthy discussions. And one of the things that we've kind of tentatively agreed on is to make sure that Moore County and Southern Pines and any other municipality in the county are saying the same things because they're struggling with the recycling issues as well. So, recycling is a good thing, but
So I think my only heartburn is the 100 limitation on the back
Mine too.
door. I think I would prefer to not have to have the attorney represent us on an ADA claim. That'd be
Well,
messy.
to Mac's point, is it ADA is a given and then it's 100 more? Or is that 100 anticipating
Oh, that's
the
a good
ADA
question.
people? Because I know healthy people who have had backdoor service for decades and would hate to not have it. And they want to be part of that 100, they're not ADA. So do you know?
I have a suggestion.
You
I've already emailed both Mike and Jessica suggesting that we do some research on ADA and see what their criteria is, and then that we see if we can gather some data on how many people in the community we think will meet that criteria.
Okay.
And then we can go back to the company and say, okay, we'll set it at 100, but if it's 120, you've got to do it. We'll come up with a formula for what we'll pay for those extra 20. But we have to do it.
obviously we should follow Mac's lead on that. But at the end of the day, if we've got 101 and that went up, we're not going to be, the town's not going to be able to tell that 101 no. I mean, obviously we'll have to make some exceptions in some form or
Right.
fashion.
Right, okay.
If their first number was 5%, that's something closer to like 250 households, isn't it? So, okay. I think,
Actually, I think their first number was actually 3%.
oh, okay.
And when I
500?
had some initial conversations with them, I said, I think that's too low. And so I had gotten them to agree to 5%. And so that was when we saw this 100, we're like, oof, it's a little concerning.
Differently later on, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think that's one of their sticking points.
Okay.
They don't want to do backdoor service, but if you say we need this many more, I don't think that's a sticking point at this point in time. It would be even better for us to have that data, that information for the RFP that we're gonna send out,
Yeah.
because that, we need to write in there, we need 100,
Right.
200, 300, whatever it is.
Right, great.
To me, that's the more important
That's
document.
the only thing that makes my antennas go up. And thank you, and thank you, and thank you, thank you. I mean,
Thank
a lot of
thank you to
people-
him.
Yeah, oh my gosh,
Well, I
yeah.
gotta call David as soon as I leave here.
So-
I'll tell him
I'm
something.
happy.
Yeah.
He is paid for himself.
Well, let's talk about that. So I just handed you another document. This is an updated document from Davenport Lawrence. Again, this is part of the original document we worked under. I'm not asking for any additional, there's no vote that needs to be done with this because the money is there. So what we've done, we took his original scope and took some stuff out of the scope. And it actually saved us $2,500. But as you know, we added some stuff to the scope, like we want him involved in RFP negotiations. We need those kind of things. So basically, it's another $15,000, but we've already got $2,500 that we didn't use. So we're using another $11,000, which would probably ultimately come out of the Public Works Administrative Fund. The funds are there. This is just for transparency. We're not, there's no budget amendment needed. There's none of that kind of stuff. This to let you know, unless you say something different, unless you say, no, you know what, we don't want to use David anymore, or no, we don't want to pay $11,000. But this is basically from Davenport Lawrence on what was changed. So I'll put that up there for your.
It appears he's still paid for himself.
I
mean,
that-
moving
That was
forward-
my one thing. If somebody
Yeah.
said, I said, well, look, he's already saved what we're asking for. So,
Right.
yeah.
I've been incredibly happy with his work. So,
Fine.
yeah.
So you don't need anything from us except an attaboy moment?
Yeah, me being transparent, parent saying, hey,
Okay.
we're going to pay more than what was originally approved,
Okay.
but we have the funds for that.
Do we need a vote for it?
No.
Tonight.
No.
No.
We're working on trucks. Anything else? Do we want to talk about trucks at all?
One thing I did want to note, just for transparency, since you're essentially telling us to move forward with yard debris, I know Chief and David have had some conversations, and we're going to be transitioning our collection schedule from a guaranteed day to a guaranteed time frame. And so we'll kind of say we're serving this region like this week. We feel like that makes expectations better, and it eliminates like calls and complaints. And
Gives us
that's
some
what David
leeway when the
recommends.
truck does break down or when you do have a staffing issue, if people aren't expecting us on an exact.
Not committed to Thursday. Right. Okay.
Is it set in stone right now on a certain day of the week?
Is.
I was
And
gonna say, I was like, I don't think people know that. The people I've talked to are like,
Let me assure you,
People know
there are
that.
plenty of people that know it. Let me-
people who've been missed for 6 weeks in a row are not gonna be upset that.
And actually, historically, we didn't have a guaranteed day. And
Right.
so we're kind of going back to how we used to perform that. So I just wanted to mention that because that is one change. But we are modeling still collecting twice a month. So it would be a very similar situation. And we're also modeling picking up the piles. So we've had some conversations about serving those neighborhoods that the HOAs require the cans. So we're already thinking through that.
Is there, if someone is doing their own yard waste and they don't want to throw it in the pile on the curb, do we have, I guess they can take it to Moore County.
They can.
But
It's
there's
free-
no
It's free
other-
for them.
Okay, so it just makes sense for them to make the trip all
It's
the way
free
out
for
there.
them. If they've got a way to get it there, they don't get charged.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's entirely true.
Yard waste?
Because we learned when we were trying to look at some alternatives during the ice storm, I think there's a minimum $5 to dispose yard debris.
Really?
Yeah, because we were offering rebates to people who took advantage of that.
Yeah, I do remember that. That is not what we were told. We went down there and that is not what I was told, but I do remember that $5.
They've changed, that would have
I don't
been
know.
a different
have-
fiscal year.
Yeah,
but-
they have made some changes, but I don't know.
Okay, let's look into it and that way we can share that with the
Yeah.
public. Because I know there are people who do their own yards and would have the ability to do that,
Yeah.
who don't want the waste sitting out there. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mike.
Anything else to be brought before the council?
No, we appreciate you letting us add this so that Mike's really excited to go
Well, he
issue a
ought to
letter of
be. I
intent
mean,
for
that
some
is
trucks
exciting.
tomorrow.
So I would wonder if you would like to entertain my motion to adjourn.
Oh, that would be a wonderful motion. Is there a second? All right.
Aye.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Paul.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're okay. I think we kind of answered everything that yeah. I mean, I'm good, but go ahead. I want to talk to you first. No, that'd be.
I got everything I need to ask you this.